All right, today we're diving into one of Japan's most haunting and frankly baffling unsolved crimes. It's a case about a killer who murdered an entire family. But then, instead of running, he stayed for hours. He just hung out. And when he finally left, he vanished, leaving behind this ghost story that continues to perplex investigators to this very day.
So let's set the scene. It's the morning of December 31st, 2000, in a quiet Tokyo suburb. A grandmother goes to visit her daughter's family and walks into an absolutely unimaginable scene. But the horror wasn't just the crime itself. No, the real mystery is what the killer did after.
So, here's where things get really strange. Instead of making a quick escape, the murderer just lingered. He stayed in the house for up to 10 hours. And his actions during this time are what make this case so uniquely disturbing. They paint a picture of someone who was unnervingly calm, almost totally in control.
I mean, it's just the sheer audacity of it all. He ate their food, right, out of their fridge. He used their family computer. He patched up his own wounds from the struggle. And then he apparently took a nap on their sofa. This is not a panicked intruder. This is someone who felt completely at home after annihilating the family who lived there.
But before we get any deeper into the clues, it's so important that we remember the people at the heart of this story. This wasn't just a crime scene. It was the home of the Miyazawa family, and their lives were just brutally cut short. Mikio, Yasuko, and their 8-year-old daughter Nina were all stabbed to death. Their little 6-year-old son, Ray, was strangled in his bed while he was sleeping. A whole family just wiped out in a single night. Now, because the killer was so bizarrely relaxed after the murders, he ended up leaving a mountain of evidence behind. I mean, he left his DNA, his fingerprints, personal belongings, creating this incredibly detailed but deeply contradictory profile of a person who, for all intents and purposes, doesn't even seem to exist. He was almost comically careless. He left the murder weapon, a sashimi knife, at the scene. He also left his own jacket, his sweatshirt, gloves, and a hip bag. It's like he almost wanted to be found. And here is where the puzzle gets truly strange. DNA from blood at the scene shows the killer was a male, type A blood, but his ancestry was a huge shock. His mother's side was European, maybe from around the Mediterranean. His father's side was East Asian. Now, a mix like that is incredibly rare in Japan, which just makes it even more baffling that it hasn't led to an identification. And the clues just kept getting weirder. Get this, sand found in his hip bag wasn't from a Japanese beach. Nope, it was traced all the way to the Mojave Desert in California, right near a U.S. Air Force base. It points to a possible military connection, but that trail, like pretty much all the others, has so far led nowhere. The level of detail police have is just astounding. They know his shoes were a specific model made in South Korea. They know his sweatshirt was a limited edition. Only 130 of them were ever sold. They even managed to track down 12 of the people who bought one. But that 13th owner, the killer, still a complete ghost. So just think about what they're working with here. The police have a nearly complete picture of this person. A young man, probably between 15 and 22, about 5'7", thin built. They've got his DNA, his fingerprints, his clothes, even his habits. They have everything, except his name. So with this huge volume of clues and just the sheer brutality of the crime, it's no surprise that it triggered one of the largest and longest-running police investigations in Japanese history. The effort has been absolutely monumental. Just look at this number. Over the last 2 decades, almost 250,000 investigators have worked on this case. That is a staggering amount of police resources, all of them dedicated to finding just one man. And they've had plenty to work with. Over 12,000 pieces of evidence have been collected and analyzed. I mean, in any normal investigation, this would be more than enough to lock somebody up and throw away the key. The reward for information is sitting at 20 million yen. That's about 130,000 US dollars. Yet despite the massive manhunt, the mountain of evidence, and a huge financial incentive, the killer is still out there. You know, this case hasn't just haunted the public imagination, it's left a permanent scar on Japanese society. It actually led to fundamental changes in the country's entire justice system. In fact, one of the biggest legacies of the Miyazawa family's murder was a major change to Japanese law. The intense public outcry and media pressure was a key reason why Japan completely abolished the statute of limitations for capital crimes back in 2010. And what that means is the hunt for their killer will never, ever officially end. And even today, more than 2 decades later, this case continues to generate headlines. From the sad news that the family home, which was preserved for years as a crime scene, is finally set to be demolished, to teenagers foolishly trespassing for a test of courage, to new legislative pushes for expanded DNA use, this case just refuses to fade away. And so, we're left with this one final, chilling question. How can someone leave behind their entire identity, their DNA, their clothes, their actions, and yet remain a complete phantom? The Setagaya family murder is just this terrifying reminder that sometimes, even when you have all the pieces, the puzzle remains unsolved.